Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now let me digress for a second. NBA. I was watching The Herd with Colin Cowherd. I have a lot of respect for Cowherd's takes. He had Nick Wright on. I have a lot of respect for Nick Wright's takes. So I thought, okay, great. Let's hear what these guys have to say. And Nick Wright happened to have attended the Laker game recently, where he was sitting next to NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, right? And Nick made a great point that LeBron James in his 19th season is having a historical year for guys in their 19th season, right? But then Nick got a little bit too caught up in the moment, right? This is what happens. I used to live in LA. This is what happens when you live in LA and you get caught up in the local hype. Nick then said, LeBron James, and I love LeBron, one of the best I've seen. He said LeBron James is the best player in the Western Conference, right? Folks, all I can say is that I've watched a lot of big men in my life, right? I've seen some big men who were spectacular passers. Wilt, a little before my time, once led the league in assists from the center position. Kareem, spectacular passer, right? Bill Walton, spectacular passer in his heyday in the 70s with the Trailblazers. I'm not sure if I personally have seen a better passer than Joker, right? The reigning MVP is actually underrated. He's the best big man in the game. I'll agree, Joel Embiid has great highlights. But my goodness, LeBron's one of the best players in the league. If you asked me who's better right now, LeBron or Joker, I have to go with Joker. Right? Boards, blocks, range. What I think a lot of people are missing is just how historical it is for a center to be out there hitting threes, to have his touch, to have his passing ability, while also getting big man numbers from him, right? His boards, to me, makes him beyond elite. So with all due respect, I know LeBron's a Laker. Let's not get too caught up with the local scene. Also, in the Eastern Conference, now Nick Wright named three guys who he thought have an argument that they might be better than LeBron, right? I'll just put it to you this way. And LeBron has had some great years recently, right? He led the league in assists one year. People need to remember that. But so too did the guy who right now is second in the league in assists, James Harden. The only guy above him is Chris Paul, right? Understand, James Harden has led the league in scoring multiple times. What James Harden has pulled off over the last 2 years since he joined the Brooklyn Nets is just downright ridiculous. A multiple scoring champ going to a team with KD and Kyrie remakes himself into a triple-double threat. They recently played LeBron's Lakers, right? Now understand, AD's back. He's shaking off some rust. Okay, fine. On the net side of the play, KD was out. Kyrie was out. Folks, it was one man against the Los Angeles Lakers. James Harden ends that game with a triple-double. Right? Now, I've long said the best players in certain sports are guys who don't even get the pub. As much as I like LeBron, right? And LeBron, as I've said, is one of the best players I've ever seen, right? But I can't say that this guy is better than either Joker or Harden today. Also, the people who keep saying, oh, you're either for LeBron or you're for Michael, right? Folks, Larry Bird is better than LeBron. Understand, in the 80s, before we figured out what 40, 50, 90 meant, Larry back then had 2 such seasons. And of course, he walks off the court with a career average of 10 boards a game. Right? So come on now. You know what I used to live in Marina Del Rey. I know how it is. You're down there. You're like, hey, Lakers are the best ever. Hey, AD, oh my God, he's one of the best big men ever. You know, LeBron certainly is one of the best players ever. Is he more historical at forward than Joker is at center? No. Right? James Harden, all I could say is, I'm still trying to figure out how James Harden 1 year averaged 36 points a game and lost the MVP to Giannis, who is the opposite of Harden, right? I like Giannis as a person, but Giannis's game is limited, right? Giannis out by 3, player take the shot. You know, Giannis isn't Harden in any stretch of the imagination, right? You know how Giannis is going to try to score. You know what Giannis is going to do. Do you with James Harden? Anyway, let's get back to boxing. You know it sounds disrespectful. And I understand with boxing, reporters want access. They want friendships with star athletes, right? You also want to make sure that in a sport like boxing, where careers can literally change the night of the fight, that you talk with athletes in a way that at least shows some appreciation for their past work. I get it. But can we get real here? A few points. And I understand some fighters out there, Jaron Ennis, for example, believes Gary Russell beat Mark Magsayo, right? No, he didn't. More importantly, you know, Russell is 33 in a lighter weight class. Right now, folks, you know, I have a corollary. Heavyweights age more slowly. Well, guys down at 126 or so, they age more quickly. Let me also say that in boxing, guys can suddenly look old overnight. I thought Magsayo beat Gary Russell. Let me just say, in the early rounds, before Russell's right shoulder gives out, right? And now we're hearing, and it's troublesome, that this is a chronic injury. Folks, this is what aging looks like. In your 20s, that right shoulder might be a little twitchy. You say, I'll just work out the kinks. I'll just get my adrenaline going. We'll just make this work, right? In your 30s, your body starts to say, no, hey, you know that shoulder problem you had in your mid-20s? Hey, player, I'm still here. Right? Only now, the quick twitchiness, the muscles that you use to compensate aren't there. That's what age looks like. These chronic injuries suddenly become bigger and unmanageable. So, before the shoulder goes out, right, Gary Russell, who had some of the fastest hands in boxing. I want people to look at Russell against Johnny Gonzalez, a fight I was on the wrong side of. Right? Johnny Gonzalez was a personal favorite who delivered for me in a few fights, and I thought Johnny would do a lot better against Gary. I was watching that fight. It was early, like the first round. Gary came out, flash hand speed, and I understood my money was gone. Right? Well, I'll just say this. Before the injury, here, Mark Magsayo is faster than Gary Russell. right? Younger Gary Russell would have come out and you would have noticed, whether you wanted to or not, that the guy had blinding hand speed. And his hand speed was the kind where, he's just looking at you, it's slow motion, then suddenly, boom, there's the hand speed. And you think to yourself, whoa, what was that? Then he's flashing it time and time again. That's a younger Gary Russell. Here you had an opponent who was able to come in on Russell, throw faster hands at Russell, and land, and it's a devastating punch. He lands repeatedly a right hook to Russell's body. Repeatedly. This is in the first 3 rounds of the fight. So Magsayo's off to a fast start. Right? Just look at the film. It's a right hook to the body. He's coming in. He enters the pocket. Magsayo is the kind of guy who needs to be episodic. He can't linger in the pocket. He's most effective when he first enters the pocket with that first or second punch. That right hook to the body was always there for him, early. Then, of course, Russell hurts his arm. Russell's southpaw. Right now, the only reason we're talking about this fight is because Magsayo is so young that he didn't seem to realize after Russell hurts his right arm, his right shoulder, that Russell couldn't throw his right jab. In other words, Magsayo prepared to fight a healthy Gary Russell. So he's staying away from where he should have been parked. Right? In other words, you're fighting a guy with a very good jab, which is what Russell has. Very good jab. And suddenly the guy can't throw it. A fighter who's a little less hardwired, who's adaptive, reactive, who can actually change what they're doing based on changed circumstances, would have then thought to himself, okay, great, well, let me stand where Gary would have been able to hit me with a straight right hand. Now I can actually stand there because Gary can't throw the jab. Gary can't use that hand for anything. Right? Magsayo should have been rolling in that direction because Russell couldn't throw right counters. So it seemed to me that what Magsayo should have done was come in with left hooks to the body, come in with left hooks up top, right? Because Russell would have been unable to blow him out there. Force Russell to reach for him. Magsayo should have been moving to his left, Russell's right. Force Russell, a southpaw, to have to move to land his left hand. Right? Instead, Magsayo keeps fighting the same fight. Right? This is what happens when fighters train, they're young, they aren't loose enough to figure things out. Right? Also, somebody's going to have to explain to me what Magsayo's doing after starting the fight, landing that right hook to the body. What he's doing, trying to headhunt on Gary Russell, when Russell, of course, has the upper body movement. Gary was champion for a reason. Right? Gary has the upper body movement. You're going for Gary's head. Gary's ducking under the punches. Right? And of course, Magsayo is looking for headshots with his right hand after jumping out in a lead in the fight with his right hand to the body early. Now suddenly he's looking for headshots on a guy whose head's elusive. Right? So it took Magsayo a few rounds to figure out that he was dealing with an injured Gary Russell, even though the commentators knew it. Magsayo had Freddie Roach in his corner. Freddie Roach knew it. Right? But understand, Magsayo is comfortable doing a certain thing. And he's not the kind of guy who can process the idea of, oh, Gary no longer has a right hand. you know, let me just stand where Gary can't hit me over on his right side. Well, anyway, Gary just doesn't have the volume in this fight. He's just not landing the punches. Magsayo does do one thing right. With Gary hurt, Magsayo's active. So he's the one landing the punches. Right? The gap between the punches landed is huge. In a fight where Magsayo wins the early rounds, is throwing more volume late in the fight. Isn't hurt. In other words, I get the idea that, okay, Gary's not landing a lot of punches. Well, if he's knocking the other guy down, okay, we'll forgive that. Right here, that's not what happened. Magsayo isn't hurt, isn't battered by Gary Russell. Right? And so I don't even understand the scoring. I'm a Russell fan. Russell's been great to me over the years. I'm a Russell fan. And I thought the challenger here beat him by more rounds than the judges did. Right? You have razor close scorecards in a fight where Gary Russell lands well less than 100 punches over 12 rounds. What fight were they watching? So I thought Gary lost. More importantly, for gamblers, I need for people to understand that this nagging shoulder injury that Gary apparently has worked through in other fights is an existential threat to Gary's career. Right? You don't know when the shoulder is going to go out next. Understand, if the shoulder has hurt Gary, has been a concern of Gary's for years, then this isn't a problem that can easily be solved. Gary's 33 years old. Let's say that there is debris in that shoulder. Let's say that surgery is needed. I'm just telling you, a big part of boxing is timing. Right? It's comfort level with your body's limitations. If Gary undergoes surgery and he's out for a prolonged period of time, then he comes back, he's no longer the champion, he's going to have to test the shoulder out. Folks, power is the last to go, not hand speed. Right? Some of the fighters who are in the game, not all of them, but some of them, after lengthy careers, are the guys who are relying on power and timing. Right? Gary was relying on hand speed. It's a different world. Right? Hand speed, physical gifts, and technique. Gary's a technician, no question about it. Right? That's how he survives to the last round here in this fight. So I've enjoyed Gary's work. Let's be clear here too. Gary's only been fighting once a year. Right? So Gary, when he had the title, wasn't fighting that often. Now that chronic injury has completely come out of the closet. Right? Now it's with him in the middle of the ring where everyone knows about it. Right? The announcers, the opponent. Right? Even Mark Magsayo after a few rounds. Right? I think Gary at this stage is in the last moments of his career. And I know that sounds hard because he enters the ring the longest reigning champion in boxing. Folks, this is a warrior sport. Opponents have no mercy for you. If you have an eye injury, they're going to go after the eye. If you have a shoulder injury, they're going to go after the shoulder. Now on film, people realize that Gary, of course, throws the left hand and is then going to try to pivot away after throwing the left hand. I'm just telling you, future opponents are going to park on Gary's right side where his jab used to be, where he can't throw that right hand for 12 rounds anymore. And after Gary comes in and throws that straight left, then tries to pivot away, I'm just telling you, crafty vets are going to follow him after the left-hand pivot. And they're going to know he doesn't have a right hand. This sport's too unforgiving. You're dealing with world-class fighters. If they know you're a one-handed fighter, or if they suspect that you can no longer pump a jab for 12 rounds, they'll figure out a way to wait you out until you become a one-handed fighter. They might even target that shoulder with a portion of their attack. And they're going to find a way to hit Gary on his right side. I congratulate the new champ. Two-handed Gary Russell, younger Gary Russell, would have beaten him. I'll concede that. Right? Magsayo comes at you in straight lines. Right? He's a little bit too square when he's up in the pocket. Right? Obviously, in my opinion at least, he's not adaptive reactive. It's not he's hurt his right hand. Let me be over on his right side. Let me throw punches, left hooks that are going to carry me over on that right side. So after I throw the punch, I'm out of harm's way. Right? But where Gary Russell is now is that this up-and-coming fighter beat him by, in my opinion, at least a couple of rounds. That's how I saw the fight. Let me hear from you. I understand. They're professional prize fighters who see this fight differently. I understand. The judges had this fight razor close. Right? A fight in which Gary Russell threw something like less than 80 punches. Landed less than 80 punches over 12 rounds. Do the math, folks. Right? Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this video. Thanks for stopping by.